And welcome to View Sasa's The Fourth Estate, a fresh edition. My name is Wahiga Mwaura, and this is the show where those who cover the news, so to speak, talk about how the news was covered. And we do this every day right here on View Sasa. Let me introduce my guest now. Let me start at my far right, Francis Gachuri, senior political reporter. Welcome to the program.
Asante.
And next to him, Mark Otani, editor, radio and social media right here at the Royal Media Services. Welcome to the program as well.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, you must be tired. The last 4 days grueling. How do you think we covered this election differently as compared to the August 8th one? Gachuri, I'll start with you.
Tiring, yes, it was, has been. Covering an election is never an easy affair. Having covered a few of them, I can tell you, you mentally prepare the moment you know the date of the elections. Because way before that, the campaigns and even the actual voting day, it's a process. Compared to, I don't know what to compare it to, the August 8th. I think a few of the mistakes that we made in the run-up to the August 8th election, we tried to cover to amend them.
For example,
there was a question of a balance before the August 8th election, and it's a deliberate move that you make as a media house and as an individual journalist to try and give fair coverage to the contestants in the race, because ours is to tell our viewers what's happening, what the various contestants are saying, what are they selling, and basically to let the people make a choice. But at times, due to the vagaries of preparations for the election, it becomes a little difficult to hit that balance. Sometimes some functions will end late, and it will be expected that, let's say the order is saying story 1 is NASA, story 2 is Jubilee. For one reason or the other, the person who's in the field does not make it in time to file a report. And so obviously the Jubilee story will come before the NASA one and vice versa.
Depending on who had an earlier function.
And you get a lot of backlash. There are people who will say deliberately you're delaying their story to paint them in bad light, but it's never deliberate.
Okay.
So those are some of the challenges. The viewer out there doesn't know what's happening. You can imagine if a rally ends at 6 p.m. and you have a 7 p.m. story to file, the process of editing and so on and so forth.
You won't make it on time.
There's this assumption that people make that when a rally ends at 6, by the next minute you should be on air with that story. It's difficult because you have to prepare and edit, but these are some of the things that people don't know. So yes, there are mistakes that were made in the run-up to the August polls, but we try to correct them.
And you think we've done a good job correcting them
not
by
yet,
and large?
Not yet there.
Okay.
There's still room for improvement, but I can say comparatively, what we did in the run-up to the August polls and what we did in the run-up to the October 26th poll, there's a difference.
There's a difference.
There's a difference.
I'll come back to you on that. Let me bring in Mark. Your experience in radio and social media. Do you think those platforms face the same challenge as TV, which I know Gachuri is very well versed with?
More or less it's the same challenge, because whether you're online or on radio, you still need to create the balance. When you're covering this side, you must cover this other side. But sometimes, just as Gachuri has said, sometimes you might not get the story that you want to be number one. You might not get it ready by the time you want to go on air. But the listener or whoever is reading your tweets will not know that there's some back-end preparations that goes into it. So, but we always try. When you get one, you must have the other, even if it's not fully ready. Sometimes the goodness about radio, you can go with the dry script without the audio as you work on the audio, because sometimes those things arrive on time. Yes, which sometimes you can't do for TV.
Okay.
Yes.
And any challenges? Gachuri has said that there's been some improvement from between August 8th and October 26th. Do you feel the same?
I think there's some improvement, because it's like as the Supreme Court was dealing with IBC and how it was not fully prepared. I think it was also like we were also being told the same thing. So I think as IBC was preparing for the fresh election, according to the Constitution, the media was also preparing to make sure it gets its acts together as well during that period. But I think we have made some great improvements. Even if we are going to get backlash on one or two things, but you know, you can never get it perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll talk to you about room for improvement. But before that, this time round, we can basically say we highlighted everything relating to the election, the build-up, the actual day, and even protests. We were accused after the August 8th poll of self-censorship. This time round, however, we've been live in Migori, Siaya, Kisumu, every day. Can you say that media has redeemed itself after being accused of self-censoring too much after the August 8th poll?
It's a judgment call. I would say it's a judgment call. It's an editorial decision that you make. For example, if you show riots and demonstrations in one part of the country, you know there's a spiral effect. Let's say supporters of NASA, when they see Migori, their colleagues in Migori demonstrating and engaging the police officers, if there are similar police officers, let's say in Kisumu, in Kakamega, in Bungoma, in Mombasa, there's always that drive to do what the other people are doing. You will say we have these instructions to make sure that the election doesn't happen in this area, and our colleagues in Migori are doing it. Us in Mombasa should also do the same. But at the same time, it evokes emotions. So it's a judgment call that you make as a media house and as individual journalists. Because also, you while showing the truth, you also don't want to incite the country. Because our country is very politically polarized. What you do in one area has an effect on the other area. But so it's a very delicate balancing act. But at the same time, you don't want to hide the truth, because if there are demonstrations in one part of the country, you have an obligation to tell the country what's happening. But at the same time, you must balance it out so that also you don't perpetuate it in such a way that one would say, because there's one demonstration in one part of the country, that the country is on fire. So it's a very delicate balancing act. You know, because at the same time, Wahiga, if you remember, in 2007, the media was accused of fanning violence.
That's right.
At the same time, in 2013, we were accused of self-censorship.
Yes.
And so it's a balance. Do your damn. Don't do your damn.
How much power does traditional mass media have, bearing in mind, in Kanwera days, if you didn't see it on TV or hear it on radio, then information would not get out. But now with social media, Twitter, Facebook with 5-10 million Kenyans, can mass media really say that if we don't air this, it won't get out? Yet we know that WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter is conveying information at a much faster rate than we actually
see, Wahiga, even in the media houses that we work for, we have very robust social media platforms that are managed by equally competent people as those who are actually. Put it this way, we have it's a dual kind of situation. I'm a consumer and contributor of social media stuff for the media house we work with. But at the same time, I also have to work alongside the traditional media, so to say. But at the same time, the question has always been, that which you see on social media, at the end of the day, you will still want to watch on TV and see whether... So the traditional media is more confirmatory than social media. And in the advent of fake news, people will want to see whether you have seen it on Citizen TV, whether you have read it on the papers, whether you've heard it on radio. And that's why even the perpetuators of fake news have even gone a step ahead. They even fake logos of media houses.
That's right.
Why? To give it some authenticity. Because if somebody sees the brand of one media house or the other, it sometimes tends to sink that by there this is the truth, even though that may not necessarily be the truth, because it's fake news.
Let me get Mark's take on this. Should media apologize for, quote-unquote, censoring some of the protests that happened after the August 8th poll with what we know right now?
I think...
Does media have anything to be apologetic about?
I don't think so, because number one, we have to live with the realities of the day. If a protest is happening in a certain region or in a certain area, you have every obligation to cover it. Only as long as you don't take it overboard when you know things are getting out of hand. That's why you see at some point, even if it's live coverage, it goes off, because you don't want to take it overboard. But there's always somebody who is, like a reporter, who is telling what is happening and giving it perspective. As long as there's that perspective, I think you shouldn't be blamed for anything about it.
Okay. Yes. And on that same note, should we have switched off the fight between NASA legislators, Jubilee legislators at Pan-Africa Hotel last week? There were some who are feeling we are inciting the nation by showing the Pan-Africa Hotel turned from a classy hotel to a boxing ring. I'm sure you all keenly follow those events. Should we have covered that differently?
Yes or no? Yes and no.
And no.
Yes, why? Because it is important to show our country the caliber of leadership that they have.
What caliber of leadership do they have in your fair take?
I mean, leaders, the question of leadership is about leading. If you show your people that the best way to resolve differences is through boxing, then, I mean, the country should see the kind of leadership it has. And you know, a country gets the leadership it deserves. Those people did not elect themselves. They were elected by the masses. So if their decision is that when we have a difference, when we have issues, we box each other. Then basically that's what they're telling their supporters down there. So there's no need for our politicians to preach peace while they're not exercising the same peace. That which they want you to resolve peacefully, they should lead from the front. What they did at Pan-Afric was distasteful. It was not nice. It was bad. Should you have shown it live? I think yes. Let people see the kind of leaders that they have.
Okay.
Should we have aired it live?
For
Maybe
that prolonged
no.
period that we
Maybe
did.
no, because such things also have a way of evoking emotions. I mean, there's somebody, let's say, for example, Anthony Oloche's supporters in Mathare constituency. They must have felt that our MP was under siege, siege. So probably they would want to say he was being attacked by supporters of the other team. And such things have a way of getting or permeating into the hearts of the people that one leader draws his support base from or doesn't. So yes and no. Did we deserve to put it on there? I think we did.
You think we did?
Maybe not necessarily as long as we did, but probably a little shorter, but we should have done it. By now, people know the kind of leaders that they had at Pan-Afric that day.
Okay. Your take, Mark?
I actually agree with what you said, because sometimes we try to sugarcoat what is happening, and we try to only paint the good side of our leadership, when you know very well there's something wrong with the kind of leadership that we have elected. And the type of leaders we get, obviously, is a reflection of who we are. If that is how they resolve the issues, means that's exact. You can't tell me whatever you saw on TV. You didn't know that is the kind of person you elected. So when we bring it out, it should give you time to reflect about the kind of people you elect and how the kind of things you look for when you elect a leader. We can't hide it and pretend like we have good leaders so that we only bring them to the studio and see the good side of them. We need to paint it out. Only the length is what was the issue, because now the longer it became, the more it degenerated into something else.
Okay.
Wahiga,
Yes.
there's a chapter in the Constitution, chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity. One of the principles in that chapter is that a leader, a person who holds a public office, must bring honor to the office they hold. Must bring honor to the office they
Do you
hold.
think Alice Wahome brought honor?
She did not bring any honor to the office she holds as a member of parliament. You see, there's a reason why you are called an honorable member of parliament. So that which you do, your behavior, your conduct must be honorable.
If Alice Wahome was here in studio,
I would have
before
told her the
what
same
question
thing.
would you ask her?
I would have told her outrightly that she did not act in an honorable manner.
Mark?
I think after this, what we should be asking is, what is EACC doing about it? EACC is not only about fighting corruption, it's ethics and anti-corruption. If you have already shown it on TV, they're not acting according to Chapter 6 of the Constitution. What are they doing about it? Do they wait for the cases that will bring good coverage to the Commission? Because now that is where they need to.
Those clips. We've had
But
IG Boynet.
it's from a genuine,
Many times
genuine media house.
I think, Wahiga, we allow our leaders get away with murder.
Yeah, with so
I mean,
much.
literally.
With so
totally.
much.
Because if people are fighting and they're supposed to bring honor to the offices that they hold, then they have no moral standing to criticize their people when they fight.
Yes.
You show by example that they were fighting. So, I mean, it's clear that it doesn't work that way. If you have an issue with an electoral officer, let's say Martin Malonza in Kandara constituency, you have a problem with the way he conducted himself, you have access to the chairman of the commission, file an official complaint, manhandling him, dragging him around. I mean, and then you say you should not be touched by anybody.
Because you are right.
Yeah, because it is your right. Your right ends where another person's right begins.
Yes.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the numbers. And Mark, let me start with you.
Yes.
Initially, we saw a percentage or a section of media houses saying that they'll carry out independent tallying of results, both before August 8th and, of course, before this election that we've just gone through. But right now, it seems it's all quiet from almost every media house except Citizen TV. Why do you think this is so? It's only Citizen that seems bold enough to declare that these are results from our independent tallying center.
I think the numbers game has always been a tricky one for media houses, especially because of the background of 2007, where everyone had different figures.
Okay.
But I think to some extent, not because I work here, but to some extent we need to also congratulate Citizen for standing by its numbers. Because those are not numbers that we guessed. we had people in the constituencies, but we also had forms uploaded on the IBC website. They uploaded the forms 34A. Any media house that wanted to tabulate, any person, not even a media house, anyone who wanted to tabulate those numbers, had easy access to those figures that we are using to tabulate the total numbers. So there's no way you can say that probably we did it wrong, or we should just sit back and wait for IBC to announce its numbers. Media houses should be bold enough to use the numbers that they are sure with to tabulate results.
Okay.
Yes.
Gachuri, what are the dangers of having an independent tallying center and of airing that information live day by day as a media house?
It's a decision that you must make, and make boldly.
Yes.
Because whatever happens and those numbers go wrong, then you have to bear the flak.
Yes.
Like, for example, you've seen some errors that we've made. I mean, in terms of how the graphics designing and so on and so
Yes.
forth. Some numbers that didn't work, not necessarily because that was intended to be erroneous, but because at the point of data entry while designing the graphics, an error was made. I mean, give it to the people who are working on these things. They put in long hours.
Yeah.
When people were sleeping, they were working. So a few errors here and there would happen, definitely. But you've seen all over social media, we've been lambasted
Yes.
because of
Vilified.
because of some numbers that weren't making sense. But they have since been corrected,
Yes.
and the correct position portrayed there. Let me touch on what Mark is saying. You see, the Court of Appeal in the minor KI case ruled that the results announced at the polling station are final.
Yes.
They cannot be changed, neither by the constituency returning officer nor by the national returning officer, who is the IBC chairman. Actually, to quote what the Court of Appeal said, is that the polling station is the true locus of an election. So maybe as we move on, the best way, the best tallying center will be polling station based.
Yes.
If it is possible for a media house to have deployed 40,883 people across the country, so that the results that are announced there, you immediately get that from 34A and the results accompanying it.
You don't even wait for the 34B.
You don't even need to wait for the IBC chairman to
Yes.
declare the
Yes.
results, because
Yes. You already
even the
have it.
IBC chairman cannot change anything. And that's the reason why a media house like Citizen TV is bold enough to say these are the numbers, because the Form 34Bs from the constituencies that conducted this election are final. Not even Chebukati can
Cannot
alter,
be
not even a
changed.
comma. He cannot. The only thing he can do is to identify errors if there are,
take
and
to
point
court.
them out to the Supreme Court, so that the Supreme Court can make a decision on how to correct those numbers. The Supreme Court, in a ruling made a few days to the election, when Chebukati had gone back to the court to seek clarification on what his role as the national returning officer is, insofar as the question of verifying is concerned, was given a clear roadmap and a
Yes.
clear directive on
Yes.
how to go about it. So, I mean, do your numbers, stand by them. But of course, there is a fear that probably the numbers may not add, so you don't want to be vilified.
Some
But,
medias
I mean, people must be bold. And you see,
Yes.
lastly, Wahiga,
Yes.
in the August polls, we were accused as media houses of being lazy, staying at Bomas of Kenya and waiting for the
ABC
IBC
And running a
numbers.
live stream.
Yeah, you now get surprised that IBC itself, the numbers that we were relaying were way ahead of the IBC numbers. Why? Because the returning officers had to travel from their respective constituencies to bring the numbers in Nairobi. For example, I was at Kibra constituency, the tallying center at Upper Hill High School. 2 p.m. the results were announced. I had the same results being announced at 1 a.m. Yet we had already uploaded them, and there was no difference.
Gachuri, I think you've made your point loud and clear. Even as we wind up, final questions to both of you.
Yeah.
Why do you think our leaders have, over the last 4 days, preferred to conduct interviews with international media? Deputy President has done 2 or 3 with CNN. NASA leader Raila Odinga has done 1 with CNN, SABC, Al Jazeera, and so forth. And yet, local media, we are here. These leaders are kilometers away from our premises, yet we don't seem to be doing interviews with them, and especially some very hard-hitting interviews that we have seen. Mark,
I think,
let me start with you.
I
Is there an
think-
issue? Or
I
is
think
just
to be fair to local media, even the interviews that SABC, CNN, and all these other people are doing, let me speak for radio. We did this interview. The first people to do the interview with Raila Odinga was the radio side. There was
Okay.
one of our reporters who did that exclusive interview immediately after the election, and we did that story. It's only that when you see it on international media, Kenyans take it like it's a big deal, but most of the questions they're even responding to, we have already dealt with them even locally.
Okay.
But then in terms of why they're doing that, they have dealt with the local media. Now they're targeting the international audience, the international partners, all those people. Their message is not for us. That message on CNN that you see on SABC is targeted at the You remember, Raila Odinga is targeting the legitimacy of this election. And this targeting this is supposed to be a message to the international media that this process was wrong. The deputy president is responding to that question of legitimacy to the international media. Remember, you can no longer do anything outside the international media because it's now more or less like one big country.
Yes.
The message is being packaged for the international audience.
Okay.
Yes.
Gachuri?
Basically, what the two, do I call them protagonists? Or the two sides of the divide.
Leaders from the divide, yes.
Basically, what they're trying to do is to catch the international community's attention on this matter.
Okay.
On one hand, it is expected that the NASA leadership will try to seek the attention of the international media as much as possible so that the message can go out there that there is a question of legitimacy and validity of the exercise that Kenyans conducted on Thursday. On the other hand, the deputy president on behalf of the government is basically trying to seek the international community's support for the exercise that was conducted on Thursday. Yes, the international media, as at this point, is the focus for the two sides. But some of the questions that they're asking, they're not out of this world.
Okay.
They're not as international as one would think. I mean, there are questions that we still ask here. Maybe what I think is a lesson for us, and especially for you anchors who host this gentleman here, is to focus the interviews. If an interviewee does not respond to a question you have asked and probably tries to meander, interrupt them
and
unapologetically and post.
Let me now interrupt you. In fact, it's good you said that. The Al Jazeera anchor, I think it was the deputy president, went on to accuse NASA leader Raila Odinga of quote-unquote choreographing chaos in certain parts of the country. I remember the anchor asked him very clearly, excuse me, we don't think NASA leader Raila Odinga has the resources to marshal militia in parts of the country. And he actually cut him off, put that point across, and then allowed the deputy president to continue. Do you think it's harder to ask certain questions as a local journalist vis-a-vis as international media, where you are far removed from the realities on the ground? You're not going to be accused of being pro-NASA, pro-Jubilee because you work outside the country?
Absolutely. That's the challenge that local media faces. Because on one hand, the viewership is very distinct and the divide is clear. If, for example, Wahiga Mwaura, you ask NASA leader Raila Odinga such hard-hitting questions, people will say, he's asking such hard-hitting questions because he's perceived to be a Jubilee supporter.
My name would betray you.
Your name will betray you. On the other hand, if Mark Otani sits with the Honorable Raila, Uhuru Kenyatta or William Ruto here and asks similar hard-hitting question, he will be told he has been asked to ask. He has been sent to ask those questions. But you see, in terms of the international platform, one would say, one wouldn't make such accusations that Media House A is beholden to candidate A or candidate B. They have some level of perception in terms of independence than we don't. Because you've seen on social media, whenever, let's say, our own Hussein Mohammed has hosted the NASA leader Raila Odinga, Honorable Odinga, and asked him some hard questions, the trend on Twitter is very different. And if Honorable William Ruto sits here and Hussein asks him similar hard-hitting questions, the trend will be different. So yes, it is important to ask those hard-hitting questions, and unapologetically so. If you see that an interviewee is not responding to the questions that you wanted to ask, pin them there. Don't allow them to meander. And then also, I realize this is also a good lesson for us as media houses. Quantity versus quality.
That's a good point.
Is it necessarily important to have a 1 hour interview?
1 hour, 30 minutes
You can still have a 10-minute interview that is hard-hitting, precise, and candid enough.
On that note, we want to make this a 10-minute interview that's hard-hitting, precise. 30 seconds.
I think most interviewers are victims of perception. You ask questions based on what you think, how people will react. So there's a question probably you need to follow up, but you don't follow it up because you fear you'll be labeled in a certain way. Instead of just being, when you're a journalist, you're never going to please everyone.
It appears we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. The challenges of local media in a very politically divided country. But we certainly hope journalists can rise up to the challenge and let the facts speak for themselves. It doesn't matter what your name is or which side you're assumed or people think that you're from. That's how we wrap up this discussion. The Fourth Estate, Francis Gachuri, Asante Sana, Mark Otani. I'm learning. I believe you're learning as well, even as we navigate through a place and point that Kenya has never been before. You're watching The Fourth Estate on Viusasa. Another fresh episode tomorrow. Keep it locked to Viusasa.